Right, so I'm now joined by Laura Tomlinson for our first catch-up in this series with some of our top riders to help you with some training tips and just a catch-up on how things have gone this year and how the horses have progressed through the year and just find out where everybody's at. Laura, thanks for joining us. Back in lockdown for all of us in England, but obviously those in Wales and Scotland are carrying on going, which is great news for them. But we just thought we'd instigate these to sort of give everybody sort of a little insight into your world and your training methods while people are sort of confined to barracks at home in England anyway.
Yeah.
Let's just go through 2020 for you. Sort of obviously it dawned in January and everyone had the big O word on their horizon and things just didn't quite turn out how we all thought. Just give us a little bit of an insight how 2020's been.
It's hard to do that without using any swear words, inappropriate language. No, 2020 I think has been pretty disappointing for many reasons for many people. Obviously, you know, in our sport, luckily there's a bit more longevity to it, but I'm sure for a lot of other athletes out there in different disciplines, you know, it probably is really tragic for their careers maybe. So from that point of view, I feel quite lucky. Generally, 2020 has obviously been more of a training year than a competition year, which again, I've had, you know, my personal ups and downs this year. I lost my father early in the year, which, you know, obviously is tragic in itself, but also he was a big part of my career and my training and all of that. So for me, it was a big adjustment period. So really for me, 2020 has been exactly that, an adjustment period, a training year. Yes, I've had a few competitions, but in general, it's been a year where I've sort of very much battened down the hatches and kept myself to myself and worked on the horses at home, and they've given me a lot of strength and a lot of pleasure during the lockdown periods, just having them to focus on and being privileged enough to be able to keep riding my horses and doing my sport within the lockdown sort of scenario.
But I mean, you've got three sort of really exciting horses in Finn and Betty and Kaz. I mean, they're sort of really coming, even in the sort of short space from when we were able to start competing in July to sort of present. They're all really sort of coming on. I mean, particularly Betty, who's now a sort of consistent 70% plus horse at Grand Prix. So obviously, sort of the work that you've been doing is beginning to pay dividends. And I was lucky enough to be at the test riding at Hartbury, where Finn, I won't attempt his proper name, but you did his first Grand Prix with him, and okay, it was sort of behind closed doors, but it was with 5-star judges, and I could just see how happy you were just to sort of make that achievement with him, because that sort of first Grand Prix is a huge step. Even when you sort of got gold medals from London and sort of World Championship medals, that I could see what pleasure that brought you even then.
Each horse is a different journey, so it doesn't matter what you achieved on another horse. You know, the journey you're on with each different horse has its sort of milestones, and when you've had a horse from a young age and brought it up all the way, it's always a big moment when they do their first within them. And that's really exciting. And I will also always try and make that horse feel, you know, that each milestone that they achieve is as important as, you know, maybe some of the bigger milestones I might have achieved in my career, because that doesn't have anything to do with that horse. So, you know, you've got to see everything within the perspective of that individual journey with that individual horse.
And just how are the old fluffy boys? How are Andy and Alf? Are they both well?
Yeah, they're very well. They're still at my parents' place in Amtley St Peter, and they come in every night, so they still get their pampering. They don't have to stand out in the mud all night at this time of year, but they still go out together every day and have a lovely time in the field and sort of drag whichever poor groom has to bring them out or in around the place. And they still have their sense of humour, and no, they're looking really well. So it's very nice to see them when I go over there.
Yeah, excellent news. Right, so one of the reasons that I've stolen some of your time is we're lucky enough that we're going to carry on with our plans to run the convention. We can do that under sort of some of the regulations around broadcasting and elite event protocols and things like that. So we're really lucky. And I just thought that it would be great to steal a little bit of your knowledge on one particular topic the convention itself is headlined as training to test riding. So to me, that means sort of what you do at home, converting that into what you do in the arena. And it's something that I think a lot of members struggle with. They can get their horse going beautifully at home, can get 8s, 9s, 10s for their movements, but they get to a show and it's just a little bit, everything changes. The pressure comes on, different surroundings. So I'm just cheekily going to ask you for some of your top tips on getting what you get at home in the arena in front of a judge.
Well, I think it's a good question, because it's even more relevant now than ever, because we're having these stints of being at home and not getting out. And actually, it's like you say, it's very easy to get so involved in your training and everything feels like it's improved. And then it's bitterly disappointing when we go in the room and we can't show the dividends of the work we've done at home. And sometimes that is just a matter of not quite practicing these things in the right manner at home, or maybe not practicing the test scenarios enough at home. So I think one of the big ones is a walk. I think a lot of people practice all the movements and they forget the walk. When they're in walk, they're just thinking about having a break or having a chat. And I think there's so many little details that we can work on at home to make our chances of getting it right in the ring better. So I think one of the things is practicing the test and knowing the test really well, because sometimes we forget that we might know where we're going just about, but the horse might not have a clue. And therefore, the more we practice the test, it's not just about executing the movements, but it's also practicing the preparation for each movement and how to prepare each movement in that given test scenario. And each test that varies slightly. And I think the more we practice the movements of a specific test at home in preparation, the better our chances of getting it right in the ring, because there's no reason, if you don't practice the details at home, why they should suddenly come together in the arena, especially when the horse may be a little bit different and the rider's usually a little bit different in the ring. Which brings me on to another point, which is often I think people want to deny the fact that they might be different in the ring, whereas I'd say embrace that and let you need to practice that, and your horse has to learn to cope with the rider being a little bit different in the ring, and vice versa. And I think that's something that is it's better not just denying the fact that we change in the ring, but actually catering for that, practicing that. And again, the more we practice the test scenarios and the details at home, the more chance we have of keeping the horse feeling like everything's the same when we're in the ring. If they're used to those preparations and those details being ridden at home.
And I think you sort of hit a good point there, that I think a lot of people sort of get a bit fixated that their horse changes when they go away from home. But I think equally the rider changes because you're under a different sort of pressure. Any sort of things that you would recommend around just trying to keep yourself in that same zone that you get at home?
Yeah, I think, ideally, the best competition riders are those that embrace that butterflies feeling and that little bit of excitement and turn that into a positive. If you can manage to use that little bit of an adrenaline kick and those butterflies to make you react faster, adapt better, and ride better, then that's great. If at the sort of first hint of the feeling of butterflies you panic and think, oh my god, I'm nervous, I'm gonna mess it all up or forget my test or whatever, then you're allowing those nerves to be channeled into a negative instead of channeling them into a positive. And I think partly that's practice, but also it's a mindset. So for me, I think a big part of it is visualizing your test. So, if I'm in competition mode, every evening before I go to bed, I lie there when it's quiet and visualize my test exactly how I'd want to ride it. So not just the lines of the test and remembering the test, but actually how I'm going to prepare each movement, what my horse is likely to feel like before each movement, and how I'm going to approach that or correct it, or how I'm going to, and I'll maybe ride through it in a few different scenarios. Maybe once just really nice, safe test, or a full attack mode, or once with my horse feeling a bit nervous or spooky, maybe once with my horse feeling a bit behind the leg. You can ride the test in different scenarios, and therefore you're practicing the test way more times than you'd ever be able to do it actually on your horse, and you're preparing. And if you're really in the zone, you should get that slight butterfly feeling riding the test, even if it's just in your bed. And that way you can prepare how you're going to react and ride when you've got that feeling of pressure and being in the moment. And I think that should almost, if you practice that well, that should almost become almost like a meditative feeling. you're really so concentrating, so in the zone that actually nothing else can really distract you or sort of come into your mind in that moment. And if you're doing that well, then you've got a really good chance of going into that zone when you go down the center line, and just everything else around you becomes fog, and you can just focus on what you're feeling and riding exactly how you prepared to ride.
And if you get a horse that is sort of a very different person when he's out at a competition compared to what you get at home, do you find, is it a case, I mean, I know they're all individuals, but is it a case of repeat, you take him out regularly to get him sort of more akin to that? Or do you find some, in doing more, it makes them worse? Or, I mean, I know, like I say, they're individuals, so you've got to take each one, but sort of what would be your sort of normal method of trying to help the horse with the nerves?
For me, in general, if I've got a hot horse or a nervous horse, I definitely try and take them out quite regularly, even sometimes not to compete, but just to different shows or different venues for training, so that they don't always have the pressure of going in the ring when they are a little bit stressed. You know, you can play around with different calmers, but I wouldn't say that any calmer is going to give you a sort of, you know, a miracle key. But little things, you know, I always think if you can improve several little things add up. So if you can help them feed wise, help them with the calmer, help them with the type of work you do, you've got to find out how best your horse responds to different types of work. Some hot horses, I would say, when I get to a show, I ride them once, put them away, and then only bring them out maybe 20 minutes before my actual test time, so that they don't, you know, if you've got a horse that starts to get hotter and hotter and hotter, other horses start hot and then they start to calm down. So you've got to, the only way you can learn those things about your horse is by taking them out and getting in the ring and getting to different venues. Even if you're not going in the ring, just getting to know them in different scenarios till it just becomes the norm for them.
And I think I sort of popped along to Vale View to do a bit of supporting on some social media the other week for the high profile show. And I love watching the warm up. I think sometimes watching the warm up is almost better than the tests. And I was just watched a few, and it struck me that some riders had a very definite plan for their warm up, and others, I'm not going to say they didn't have a plan, but they just looked like they focused on very, very different things. Again, do you tailor that to the horse? Or, because to me, obviously the warm up is your time to get ready for that sort of, for your show, if you like, for that sort of 8 or 9 minutes in the arena. And do you tailor that to the horse, or do you take it on a given day what you might do and sort of have to make changes accordingly?
A bit of both. I'd have a bit of a plan because, you know, assuming I know my horse quite well, I'd have a bit of a plan of how I warm up. And I tend to try and keep the system very similar to at home, because if I want my horse to feel the same as at home, I kind of need to do the same stuff as at home. So I would keep my system with each horse. But of course, you have to be ready to adapt if, you know, there's something going on around the arena that's upsetting the horse, or something that's making the horse feel very different already in the warm-up, then I obviously have to adapt a little bit, but certainly adapting within my usual way of riding and my system. And that for me is often, if I've got a hot horse, I'll start with quite a bit of lateral work, just to get the horse to accept my leg and draw into the contact. And if I've got a horse that's behind my leg, I might start with a few transitions so that they start to sort of get their engine going and start to focus on taking me forwards. But I would definitely have a plan, but not to the extent that I'm going to panic or crumble if something goes slightly out of kilter with my plan. But for sure, I think, you know, otherwise it's very easy for your, say, half an hour warm up to suddenly have disappeared and you haven't achieved anything. And others have ridden through the test 3 times within the first 5 minutes and then have another 25 minutes to go and don't know what to do with it. You know, these are all common scenarios for people that if you don't have a plan and stick to a bit of a system. So I think, you know, good preparation and even practicing your warm up at home. Practice, you know, give yourself a time that you're going to ride the test and at home, and practice your warm up, and then you'll see, okay, maybe I had 5 minutes too long or 5 minutes that I was short. And you can start to get a feel of what suits the horse at home already, so that it's not a total guess when you get to the competition.
Yeah, that sounds like a great tip, because I think probably many of us have been sort of neglected that. We don't practice the warm-up, we just practice the test at home and sort of prepare ourselves and teach our horses. So no, I think that's an excellent tip. Thank you. Yeah. I think you've given us some great takeaways there, and things that people riding at all levels can can sort of translate across. It doesn't matter whether you're doing Grand Prix or prelim. A lot of what you said is transposes to them all. So thank you very much.
No
Laura,
worries.
thanks for joining us. We wish you and the family well. Can't wait to see the next generation of Tomlinsons out there competing. I know Annalisa's sort of quite busy with her ponies and things, so hopefully it won't be too long. But thank you for joining us, and we hope your lockdown goes okay. We hope to maybe see you at Hartbury in December.
Yeah, planning on it, definitely.
Excellent. That sounds good.
Betty will be there with bells on.
Perfect. Well, we're hoping for plenty of something to really lift our spirits at the end of the year. So we expect to see everybody in the Christmas cheer. But thanks again, Laura. Lots to take away for everyone there. But thanks for joining us.
No worries. Nice to talk to you.